Welcome to On the Brink with Andi Simon. I'm Andi Simon, and as you know, my job is to help you get off the brink. And it's always such a pleasure to help you see, feel, and think in new ways. As an anthropologist, I know that if you step out and look at things through a fresh lens, all of a sudden you see new things emerge that you hadn't even anticipated. And when you do that, you begin to see how you can change to adapt to these very fast changing times. And while I enjoy the uncertainty, most people want some certainty. I have with me today a wonderful woman who you're going to enjoy listening to. Hannah Kain is the CEO and president of ALOM. She's going to tell you what this supply chain company does. So, Hannah, thank you for joining me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I just love to be here and speaking with you, Andrea. And also, I love the title of the show because I've been on the brink a couple of times. And so I know what that is about.
And that feeling is one that doesn't leave us, does it?
Yeah, it is.
Let me tell the audience about who is Hannah, and then she will tell you her journey because I think the story by itself is really worth listening to. Her supply chain company she founded in 1997. ALOM operates out of 20 global locations to support its Fortune 500 customers in the technology, automotive, life sciences, and regulated industry. Hannah was born in Denmark, where, in addition to business and a political career, she taught at Copenhagen Business School. She holds 3 university degrees. She's a board member of the National Association of Manufacturers, the WEBEC Pacific, the Women's Business Enterprise Council, WEBEC, which also serves as the forum first vice chair. And she is the board chair of How Women Lead for Silicon Valley. She's a member of the Committee of 200 for Executive Women. She has received numerous industry and leadership awards, as I'm sure you can really imagine. And recently, Hannah was named an SDCE 2024 Supply Chain Pro to know, and a 2021 We USA Top WBE CEO. She is a really interesting story to share, both in how she got into the supply chain, where it's going today, and how you, as a woman or a man, should think about the changes that are happening, your own business model, and what that's going to mean for us for the near term. The future is already here. It's just not widely distributed. So I'm not quite sure which one we're going into. Hannah, thanks for joining me today. What fun.
Yeah, there's so much to discuss, right? So, I remember starting ALOM and everybody around me was talking about what a nice person like me was doing in an industry like that. And today, the supply chain professionals is the most asked for in the room because there's so much happening in supply chain. It's really an exciting area. So, but why don't we go back to the beginning? Because you mentioned I was born in Denmark, and now people know where my funny accent comes from, right? So in 1990, my husband and I bought 2 one-way tickets to the US. And that was really opportunity calling for us. And so we were talking about standing on the brink. I had a nice career in Denmark, both a political and a business career. I was very well known and well established, but we decided we wanted to go where the opportunity was. So we took the jump and landed on the East Coast. And in 94, we got to Silicon Valley. And that's where I started seeing all this innovation going on around me, right? I got really pulled into the innovation and the thinking around how you maybe could use this technology in a different manner to help the physical supply chain. Now, bear in mind, at that point of time, nobody had thought about that, right? It was like, that was not a thing. Supply chain was not a term anybody knew. And this thing about using technology to support a supply chain, that was just not something people did, right? So I thought about that in 97, started ALOM, and that was about innovation, right? It was about using technology in a different way. And we were a startup, right? When you're a startup, you invent everything. So we invented everything. And one of the things we did, but the day we opened the door, we had customer portals with visibility. And today, again, you would say, yeah, of course, a supply chain company needs to have visibility in customer portals. But in 97, where the web was barely existed, right, that was a total innovation. And so innovation is part of our core values, right? And I'm so glad we became very innovative, because the first year we were in business, we got about 65% of our revenue from floppy disk duplication, right? So floppy disk obviously no longer exists. So we innovated and did other activities and added other service offering. We became part of the e-commerce boom. We were probably one of the first e-commerce fulfillment companies in the world. We also then evolved into other markets and other strategies. But, so innovation is really key, and thinking differently about the company. So I have different tricks, and I know you and I think alike with these type of things. I like to play mind games with myself. So once a quarter, I go in and I buy my own company. And
Wow.
I go in and say, oh, if this was a company I just acquired, what would I do with it?
Ah.
What are the potentials? What are the things that no longer work? What are the things? So at least I try to do it once a quarter, but at least I do it several times a year, going in and thinking deeply about what's the future of the industry and what's the future of the company. So that's kind of the innovation journey. But we've got lots more to talk about, I know.
Well, I don't want, so I'm going to just emphasize that for the listener or the viewer, because I have some women who I'm mentoring and their companies aren't doing so well. But I love this idea of stepping out. As an anthropologist, you intuitively understand you can't see it from the inside. You have to step out and look at it as if you aren't in it. And what would you keep? What would you shed? It's a very blue ocean approach. What will I create? And what will I simply do more of because it makes some sense? You have done that routinely. And could you share with us some of the highlights of what you found? Because I love to preach it, but I also have a hunch you saw some big, big things that no longer were useful and some new things that were coming that would, can we capitalize on that? You can share a little bit.
Yeah, so one of the things I've kept and been really conscious about is our values.
Mm.
Right? And so we are a very value-driven company, right? And that was part of my impetus for starting ALOM I really wanted to create a value-driven company. So innovation is one of the values, but quality and the entire excellence, which is personal excellence, it's also excellence as a team. Collaboration, I think one of the strengths most women have is collaboration. And so I think collaboration is a big, big winner these days, right? And then diversity, respect, so those values, they are core, they're fundamental to where the business is. So sometimes you get people in who are not aligned with the values, and you need to react to that. So that's part of, sometimes, you go, well, that person may be really competent, but they're really destroying our values, and you need to react to that. Another thought is, so that's on a very tactical side. So personnel decisions are more strategic than we think about in the moment, right? Then, of course, it's which direction should the company go, where are the opportunities, right? And that's why we all need to recharge on and off and reset our brains and look at new opportunities. So, those type of things where I see an opportunity and I'm like, we should try to go for that. Can we investigate that? So one of the things we did last year, I've always joked, if I, 10 years back or something, if I could get a patent, it would be on really great battery technology, right? And come today, batteries are like key things. Problem is, batteries can self-ignite, right? And so ion lithium batteries, you can get something called thermal runaway, and they can self-ignite. And so storing them is not so easy. So I was like, well, nobody's really doing that well. And we have some customers who have batteries, and maybe we can generate a business around that. And out of those thoughts, we put together a tiger team to investigate it. We hired some really strong experts in that area, and we built a facility to store the batteries in a safe manner, custom built for this purpose. And so it's a state-of-the-art, award-winning facility. So those are some of the innovations coming out of that.
But that is just wonderful on many scores, because I'm an observation person. You saw something with an unmet need and no solution. And you could mourn the fact that there's no solution, or you can find a solution and create a whole new business opportunity. I had a battery design company as a client in 2007, and this was a big issue. Both in terms of getting longer lasting ones, getting rechargeable ones, but storing them. And batteries aren't happy if they're not in the right places, and they're essential. So this became really a whole opportunity for you to differentiate yourself from everybody else and offer something completely fantastic. As you're thinking about that, that's not the only, I'm sure. But I also think that the state we're in right now is ripe for reinvention. And I'm wondering if you've had a recent opportunity to step away and look at your business in the light of, I think of the 5 T's. We have the tariff question, the tax question, the talent question, the technology question, right? And the trademark. Where are we going for trade? And for you, I have a hunch those are all imploding at the same time.
Yeah, so today, these days, it's shifting by the hour, right? And so there are different ways of dealing with that, but basically, you need to first start understanding the ecosystem, and that's been part of what I've been working at. Fortunately, I'm very fortunate. I have a big network of an information system and people who keep me informed, right? And so that's why I'm so engaged in the community. I like to give back, but I also get from the community. And part of getting from the community is all the information flowing in at this point of time. And so certainly I step back and I look at, so what's going on? And I try to not be too involved in each individual drama situation. And I think that's easy for people to be pulled into, oh my God, now this is happening, right? And there's a kind of the fear of missing out, the FOMO and all those type of things, right? And so looking at the little bit bigger picture, I think is important. You probably heard a lot of companies ordered a lot in first quarter to get it in before the tariffs, etc. Right? And we haven't heard the end of that story, because sometimes when you order so early on and you order a lot, then you get stuck with inventory you cannot use. You have to write it off the following years. That's no fun, right? Or you sit on a bottle that's just become obsolete, or like we are in the medical space, right, where product often expire, right? And so that's also not good to have a lot of inventory and then you cannot sell it, right? So people overreact when they get too much into that instant thing. Oh, it's exciting, right? And I think we are attracted to it because we have this adrenaline going, and we feel we are doing things. So I like to step back a little bit. Part of my morning routine is when I'm in the shower, I'm thinking about what's the most important thing I can do for my company today, right? Which, a lot of people go, oh, I've got to do this and I've got to do that, right? And, you are on this. And I'm thinking, what's the most important thing I can do? Right. And that's not just my company, it's my customers, it's the entire ecosystem. So I'm very much an ecosystem person. I'm looking at the entire ecosystem, whether it's suppliers or customers or employees or the communities we are in. And so I look at what's the most important thing I can do today, and how can I put that in front of my agenda. So instead of just starting the emails and going into the churn and on the hamster wheel, right? Trying to do that. But then I also think a couple of things, right? When I am a firm believer you are planning for 95% of everything, and the remaining 5% you can deal with. Now, if you don't plan for the 95%, right, then all of a sudden you're dealing with 100% of trouble, and that becomes really stressful, right? And especially in the environment we're in right now, where tariffs can really sidetrack everybody, right? So one of the things we did as part of our planning, apart from visibility to where our suppliers and their suppliers are, is to near source. So 80% of our suppliers are within 100 miles of one of our facilities. Right? And when you're on supply chain, each time there's a border crossing, there's risk. Right? So by having done that upfront, we have some level of risk mitigation. It's not that risk goes away, it never does, right? But it becomes a little bit easier. Now we can deal with all the other issues, right? So we have planned ahead. I'd say in this environment, I thought I had covered 95%. Maybe I in this environment only have covered 60 or 70%, but it's better to not have anything covered, right? Yeah. And then you have got really great people who can deal with those exceptions that you need to deal with. So that's one way of mitigating the situation you're in. And the other way of looking at it is building in agility. How can you get earlier warning signals? How can you be able to react really fast, right? How can you have controls but not have so much bureaucracy that you cannot act fast, right? So those type of things, be really prudent about it, be very clear about what your process is for certain things. So this entire planning around being agile and being able to get information fast and react fast, right? So those two things really is what to a large extent has helped us and helped our customers navigate these waters. We're still in there. We're still in choppy waters, but hey.
But I have a hunch that the waters have always been choppy. Sometimes they feel more like a monsoon, but at the end of the day, business for all of us is never smooth. And I think that part of our success is being agile. I'm curious because I've been talking particularly to women leaders, some of whom are really fragile when it comes to the numbers. And my feeling is that the trends that you're seeing, the leading indicators, all come to you through the data. And I'd love you if you can talk about what do you see, how do you stay agile without the data? And in anthropology, we taught a long time ago, data out of context has no meaning. So the data by itself is neat, but without meaning has no value at all. And so as I'm coaching these people, I'm trying to help them understand that you got to start with the data and end the day with the data, because in there you'll see the story of what's actually happening. I have a hunch you have a particular fiction for those, as opposed to, if we ignore it, I don't know if we can stay agile. What are your thoughts?
So I think a couple of things. I think data and being able to collect the data and focus on the right information, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of data out there, right? So you need to figure out what is the right information. So you start really with the questions. What's the questions you need to get answered, right? What's the most important questions? And so that's another mind game I'm playing with all the time is, okay, what's the information I really want, right? And then it's like, how do I get it? And I mean, that's getting easier and easier. Again, going back to 1997, and the information was really hard. I mean, even a couple of years back, it was much, much harder than it is today, right? Yeah. So a lot. I remember back when I had some information I really wanted. It was more future, looking out in the future, and I said, "This is what I dream about." I had this employee who was created a report for me, and we called it the Dream Report, and we're still referring to it like that. So you need to dream about what is it you want to, what's the information you really want to get. And I also think that it's really important to get information, correct information, and pertinent information, and get it fast.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
So speed is really important. But what we all have got to remember with data is it's a rear view mirror.
Yes.
Right. And where I think great leaders are great leaders because they look out of the windshield. They look out to the and I think that you need the data, you need to understand what was going on, but to see where the puck is going and that's part intuition. Right?
Yes, it is.
And I'm never discounting intuition, because intuition is something we all pay dearly for, right? We have all the battle scars to show for where we got, and we develop this intuition. Is this going to work? Is this not? And so I listen a lot to my intuition and the intuition of my staff, right? That knowledge base, that feeling of, is that going to fly or not? Is this a trustworthy partner? Is this, all those times? I mean, you can, when you deal with people, you can have a checklist, was a guy ever in prison? No, right? Whatever. But then you have the gut feel something is wrong, right? And we've got to listen to our gut feel. And that's why I think great leaders, great visionaries are different, right? Because they have that built in.
But I think this is so interesting because I've done several podcasts recently, and all of them with women, all of whom talked about their gut feel, their intuition. And I guess I really want to bring on a guy and say, now, does your intuition help you? Because I think that what you're talking about is a sixth sense, a feel that is connected to the brain, but in fact, we decide with the heart and the gut. How does it, and it comes from our experiences, and some work and some didn't, and those taught us a whole lot about how to feel what's coming. I'm wondering, do you get out into the field at all? As an anthropologist, I often take my clients out to their clients and to the factories where their products are worked, because they can't imagine what's actually going on. And the ideas they have come from in the office. They have no idea what's really going on. Do you go exploring? Are you an explorer too?
Yeah, I definitely am an explorer, and I like to explore the entire ecosystem, right? As I said, from suppliers, customers, and employees, right?
Yes.
I get a lot of information from employees, spend time talking with the employees, walking around. Yesterday was a walk around day, spoke with a lot of employees, understanding what they're doing and what they're seeing, right? And so, I definitely explore and pull that information in. But then I also look at the bigger ecosystem, and again, right now, it's a real interesting balance to keep yourself informed without being pulled into all the details and the stress of the instant changes and stuff like that. So I try to look for the trends. I like to look at what is most likely to happen, right? And of course, I look at things that potentially could be catastrophic and how that would impact. But I look at the likelihood of things happening and where I think the big changes are. And one thing, a friend of mine, we were talking about this entire risk management, which has become a really big discipline, and of course, especially in supply chain. And she said, well, maybe we are getting so focused on risk that we forget the opportunity, right?
Very wise woman, very wise.
Whoa, what a risk to find, right? That's a risk in itself, right? Is to not look at opportunity. And so again, I like to surround myself with people who can point things out that are, okay, Hannah, you're going down into the rat hole here. You need to look at things a little bit differently. And
You know, if you're wearing a belt and suspenders, I can appreciate it. But at some point, you really need to think about how you built this from the beginning, because as an entrepreneur, which is what you were, and even your battery story said I could see opportunities through what I was seeing and feeling that allowed me to open up new ways of providing value innovatively. You're very much a blue ocean thinker. Give me, if you can, one or two things that it's safe to share that others should be thinking about when you wake up in the morning in your shower. Some of those urgent, important things. Is the technology the biggest opportunity coming? Is it blockchain? Is it AI? I mean, is that fourth industrial revolution going to be so revolutionary? Somebody said to me, for my grandson is interested in supply chain analytics. And he's in college, and he's got a summer internship with a supply chain company. And I said, how interesting. Someone said, but they won't need humans before you know it. I said, well, maybe, but I think he's still.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so fun.
So I mean, I think technology is really key to success in supply chain, right? And I hold out great hopes for artificial intelligence. Now, going back, you mentioned blockchain, and I famously said 4 years ago that I thought that nobody needed to look at blockchain for at least another 3 years, and I will tag on to that because blockchain is really a collaborative tool,
Mhm.
right? And when it comes to supply chain, nobody right now is collaborating. Everybody is sitting in their own silo, right? So, for instance, if the customs authorities were signing on to a blockchain solution and then everybody else could tie into that, and all of a sudden we could, eliminate a lot of paperwork. But having a million different blockchain solutions doesn't do anything for anybody.
No.
So I'm putting blockchain aside for now. I want to see some real stuff before I believe in that. So artificial intelligence really important, right? And it's one of the things I speak with my chief technology officer about at least once a week, right? Is how we leverage it. So we have seen great strides in one big area, which is how AI processes images.
Uh-huh.
And you probably know that because if you have a phone where you store your images and you do a search on it, I mean, you can see when you were with this person, and you can search for that person or that location or whatever, and it will pull up the right photos, right? And it's the same in supply chain. We have a lot of physical things going on. And so being able to see, for instance, did the forklift drivers have a near accident that they didn't report, right? Or was there a quality error that the system is catching because it knows that something needs to happen, right? So those type of things just getting much, much better. So we are using artificial intelligence in those areas. Then there's what really gets my juices flowing. I mean, you press the button here. Right? And that's again the future, looking at the future, getting predictability into the equation, right? So one of the things that's really hard in supply chain is you have systems that are very static, right? All the systems are based on that you have one world picture, and that world picture is essentially the way the world looked 30 years ago. And then you've got the world picture that's happening now, which is port strikes and, a blocked Suez Canal and lots of weather issues and tariff fluctuations and overbooking of container ships and a lot of other things. And what you really want to know, again, getting back to what's the important question is, when does my shipment arrive at my dock? Or when do I need to place the order for the shipment to arrive at my dock, right, at a certain day? And so artificial intelligence ought to be able to calculate that, right? Because now it can predict what the weather is going to be and a lot of other things, and the route and how busy is that route going to be. And it should be able to come up and say, you need to place that order on March 20th. But if you can do it 10 days earlier, you can save 5%.
Yes.
Right. That's what we want. We want the future to come in, and that is going to happen. Do I want to put a stake in the ground? Right. But I mean, it's going to happen gradually over the next 5 to 10 years. We are already seeing a lot of people toying with things, but it's sort of the bigger thinking around that 5 to 10 years out. So I think that's really exciting.
But you're just, that's a risk reduction and an opportunity enhancement story. If I can put into my AI service the variables that matter and come back with some reduction of the risks and better clarity of what to do, then I'm not winging it. It's not an old way of ready, shoot, aim. But it also reduces across the whole ecosystem the risks that everybody else has as well. The containers have a better idea. The manufacturers have a better idea. You can streamline processes that are cumbersome. And boy, can that reduce cost and waste. And that whoever is developing that should be able to do it faster than 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. Because man, I mean, your hands, think of what you could sell.
Well, the thing is that we have a lot of complexity built into the supply chain, and what has actually happened over the last 10 years is that the complexity has grown faster than the technology.
Yes.
And so that's why everybody in supply chain is running around trying to fix things, we're like, the pipe has a lot of holes and we're trying to fix it, right?
Too many Band-Aids.
Yeah, right. So if you look at all the legislative issues, all the stuff coming out in different locations, all the regulatory stuff, I mean, there's just a lot of things coming in. And our tolerance for certain things that should not be in the supply chain, such as child labor, has gone down, right? So how do you make sure that the supplier give the order to doesn't use child labor? Well, that may not be so difficult, but then they use 20 different suppliers, and how about them?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We have decided that we want to do that. So there's a lot of complexity built in, and the technology is just not following along. So my hope is with AI, we will get to that point and get it solved. But it's not an easy thing. So I know some of the big players.
I can only imagine how you wake up in the morning and hop in the shower and think about now what's the one thing I got to focus on for the sake of my whole ecosystem, because you're not thinking about just your company. Knowing you're thinking about the entire process from everybody across the whole spectrum. It's been a really interesting conversation.
And it's not just what's urgent, because I discern very much between what's urgent and what's important.
Yes.
Right? And if it's urgent but not important, it's not a task for me.
Yes.
Right? It's a question whether we even want to address it, right? And too many people think that urgent and important are the same. They're not. They're very different, right? So for me, important tasks, right? Yes. If a task is both urgent and important, that's fine. It will make the list, right?
But if you don't scrub it that way, everything becomes necessary at the moment, and nothing gets prioritized. And there are only so many hours in the day. One left to take a walk occasionally, also. And I think this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm so thrilled to have met you and to have brought you on. I'm sitting here saying we shall do this again in maybe 6 months to see what's next, because I think the catalytic moments are coming up faster, and they are all important, maybe. But there's a lot of transfer, and people hate change. The brain says, please stop. I don't want to know this stuff. I just want to get my product here. And I don't think it's going to be quote unquote easier if we bring manufacturing back to this country, because I don't think it's going to be the same kind of manufacturing necessarily that's going on wherever else things are being manufactured today, whether it's Vietnam or wherever. It's not simple, is it?
Yeah. It's not simple, but and I do think that there are opportunities to bring some manufacturing back to the US. It's a long-term strategy, and we need to work on that. And I do believe that there are a lot of advantages in doing that, both for the general population and seen from a security, safety standpoint, etc. And of course sustainability. Right. But so I think all of those factors play in, and I think it would be great to get more manufacturing back, but manufacturing doesn't happen overnight, right? So we've got to all of us understand the time frame it takes, and stick with the long-term goal.
Yes. Well, and that's true. I mentioned to you I had a client in the who manufactured chain in China, and the cost of transporting it was so extensive, and then you had an empty boat. You know, you can only put so much into it. He ended up putting a lot of pillows in, so he built a plant in Mississippi, and this is many years ago, and it turned into a very successful made in America plant for chain of all kinds. And we work with them on how to expand beyond simply the made in America standard chain into lots of complexity. And he discovered that there was real advantage to being able to be agile here and to reduce the time frames from idea to deliverable. And there were lots of, and it wasn't that hard to achieve that. He brought all the equipment over and just
Yeah.
reopened a plant here. So it can be done, and we can do it well.
And hopefully at some point of time we can deliver the equipment too, right? But
That's true.
I think also many companies underestimate how much effort goes into managing overseas suppliers,
Yes.
right? And so the time, the effort, flying back and forth, mistakes, and then of course the lead time where things sit on a boat and get obsolete in the meantime.
Yep.
So again, depending on what people are producing, it's worth thinking about reshoring. So reshoring meaning locating manufacturing plants and distribution facilities close to the market, right? And so that could be in the US, or it could be wherever the market is.
Well, it's an interesting time to be in the world that we're in. I was going to say in the business you're in, but I do think it's the world that we're in is going through some real big thinking, and I'm sort of excited to see where we go with it. I can be unhappy, but I'm really not that kind of person. I see opportunities. Are there risks? Absolutely. Are there risks before? Absolutely. So let's enjoy a very journey that's no destination and lots of opportunities, right?
I predicted this year was going to be the toughest year yet for supply chain professionals. And all my friends went, Hannah, have you forgotten about COVID and all the problems? And no, I did not forget. I remember very well. But I think the disruptions we are seeing right now are really challenging for supply chain professionals, playing a game you don't know the rules for. And so that's a big challenge. But each time there are challenges, there are also opportunities, right? So that's the flip side of it.
Well, and I'll wake up in the morning and remember to go in my shower and think about the most important things to think about. I think and if they'd like to reach you, is there a good way to get a hold of you? Because I think our listeners might want to, I don't know, find out more about what you do and how you do it.
Well, I am on LinkedIn, so I'm really easy to find. Hannah Kain, one word. So after your LinkedIn, and of course we have a website, alom.com, and I can be reached via that.
And we will have all of that up on our blog. This has been such fun. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thanks for a fun discussion.
For all of you who come, thank you for coming. You have lifted us into the top 5% of global podcasts, and I can't thank you enough. It's almost, I have my two podcasts ago were from New Zealand, and one was from Paris, and the world is quite interesting in terms of everyone coming to want to share their stories. My books are all available at Amazon, and you can find them at andisimon.com. My website, simonassociates.net, tells you more about what we do and how we do it. And I must say, these are fast-changing times. When I launched my business 23 years ago, my PR firm said, "You're a corporate anthropologist that helps companies change." And I went, "Yep." And then he said, "And nobody wants you." And I said, "I know. Everything stays the same, but nothing does." So I'm here to help, and it would be a pleasure to help you. And Hannah has been with us today talking about some really interesting times. We shall return. Give us 6 months or so, and then we'll see whether this was the year where supply chain professionals were really opportunistic. It turned, I don't know, all kinds of challenges into wonderful new stuff. And I do think that the technology is going to help. Goodbye, my friend. Thank you again. Bye-bye.